At MTAC, we got to talk to the heart of the cards here on the OSMcast. Hey folks, and welcome to the OSMcast, your podcast for everything awesome. Although this is not our typical kind of episode. If you want our typical kinds of episodes, go to OSMcast.com and check out our index of awesome. What we're actually going to have for this episode is an interview, an awesome interview, with the one, the only Dan Green, the voice of Yugi and Yami from Yu-Gi-Oh!, Knuckles and Sonic, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And he was a lot of fun.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun to talk to. Very personable, very informative. Not really a con guy, so it was kind of neat to get a chance to interview him.
Like, this is the first American convention he went to in years. And he made the most of it, including like a 4.5-hour autograph session, before then coming into the room and then sitting down and delivering a pretty great interview.
So, all around, pretty epic guy.
So, stay tuned, listen to Dan Green.
It's time to
We are here at MTAC with a wonderful, once-in-a-lifetime guest opportunity here. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Dan Green.
And so you are a voice-over artist, actor type guy?
I do voiceover work, whether it's artistry, I don't know. But I'm feel very fortunate to have been able to do this work for a little bit over 10 years, or more like 15. And doing the work itself is fun. Being able to portray all these different characters, and then this unanticipated, unexpected added bonus of having incredibly loving fans is just amazing to me.
So we know that one of your main projects you have done has been Yu-Gi-Oh!
Mm-hmm.
But what are some of the projects you've been currently working on?
Actually, I've been doing a lot of work in audiobooks, doing commercials, doing other kinds of narration work. And I do love cartoons. I've always loved animation, even before I started working in it. However, in New York, where I live, Manhattan, a lot of that work that we were fortunate enough to have years ago left. So I was part of a group of people that could do cartoons and basically just focus on animation work for several years. But since the industry shifted a lot of that work elsewhere, myself and all of those other people have gone on to do other things. So it's not like I don't do any animation work anymore, but it's far, far less.
Who would you say has had the biggest impact on your career?
Eric Stewart. No, I'm kidding. Although he's been a great influence. But the biggest influence on my career, I'd have to say, since I still think of myself as basically an actor, it starts with the actors that inspired me when I was younger. And that awareness that an actor is portraying those roles only came to me like around, I don't know, like when I was approaching 10 or so. And people often ask me, did I always want to be an actor? Was I a kid that always wanted to grow up to be an actor? And the answer is no. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a stuntman because I thought that would be so much fun to throw yourself off of a building, right? Safely, right? I did want to be those characters. So the actors that, attracted my attention, well, when I was a kid, I loved watching the reruns from the 1960s Ralph Bakshi Spider-Man. It's the song that Spider-Man, Spider-Man, that show. And, if I were to meet the guy who voiced that Spider-Man, I think I'd have a similar reaction to some of what the fans are telling me, So that was awesome. And then Han Solo was my hero, after that. So I spent much of my early adulthood and adolescence regretting the fact that I wasn't him. And I also loved Patrick Stewart, and I was a big Star Trek geek, and what's fortunate, and and I can see this now in retrospect, is that all of the people that were a part of those kinds of shows, Patrick Stewart, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy, DeForest Kelley, Harrison Ford, so on and so forth, they're actually really good actors, So it wasn't like I got, addicted to something lousy. So there are fine examples, and that's what inspired me to get into acting. And, yeah, those are my influences. And in terms of voiceover work in specific, I didn't have a model or a hero that I was going for. And I never grew up assuming that I would get into voiceover work, or that wasn't a goal. And I was fortunate enough to get into voiceover work quite tangentially from a friend who was supervising some dubbing work, and he asked if I wanted to do some, and I said no. And eventually I said, okay, fine. And and it just kind of snowballed from there. Yes.
Okay, so I have a dream panel I want you to do.
Okay.
Because I watched Yu-Gi-Oh! At the same time I watched Futurama. Can you and John DiMaggio ever get together for a panel somewhere?
I don't know. I'd love to meet the guy. I'd be delighted. And he has such a fantastic sense of humor. And it's also so much fun to see how animations changed. The generation that grew up watching a lot of animation decided to continue it. I mean, Seth MacFarlane has really changed the shape of animation in a lot of ways. He's not the only one. But now we have these, animations that are for adults that are also still very silly and juvenile and whatever. But I think that's evidence of a generation being influenced by an art form and then taking it a next step further. Very similar to comic books, The stuff that comes out now and has been coming out since the 80s is the direct inheritance of fans from the 60s and 50s growing up and deciding to put their own imprint on it, So that's very cool.
So I know that, one of the shows that a lot of the kids, even adults now, really enjoyed working was Yu-Gi-Oh!
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever think that a Japanese cartoon based off a kid's card game would go so far?
No, and that's no disparagement to the material. But this is quite unexpected, And I guess just one of those things that tapped the right nerve at the right time. But certainly not something that I expected. And that also is kind of an echo of, I never expected to have a fan base. But I didn't do this work to have fans. That's not why I became an actor. Which I think some people who don't do acting work might find kind of counterintuitive. I think a lot of people assume, well, somebody gets into acting so they can be seen and recognized and glorified and worshipped and all that sort of thing. And we certainly do that with a lot of celebrities and stuff like that. But really, I think the heart of a lot of performers rests in wanting to explore things and express things, and that form of performance happens to be what they're most talented and suited to pursue to do that. I think I didn't answer your question, did I?
Possibly.
Okay, we'll review the tape.
As in Yu-Gi-Oh, you do portray two characters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of two different sides.
Yeah.
How do you deal with the dynamic?
Right.
Of the two?
It's fortunate that I'm psychotic. But to have a character with, it's really two characters, right? And as an actor, you can understand the principles of a character and what they're about. And so it's basically just having two characters. They are an interrelationship with each other. But it's not like portraying a character that has a mental condition, right? It's you approach the characters separately. And I felt very fortunate to be able to have that kind of dynamic to work within. And I think it was interesting for myself and hopefully, for the audience, that as much as at the beginning of the arc of the series, it seems like Yami Yugi's really the one that's helping out Yugi. As the story progresses, you see that Yugi equally influences and helps Yami, right? And I think that's a very true thing that happens in life, and it was great to see that reflected in the story. Oh, but to get back to the question that I thought I didn't answer, did I expect it to, have such an effect? Absolutely not. And I think it's worth noting, and I mentioned this in another discussion. When the first episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Aired in the United States, it was within a week of 9/11. And actually, I think the first episode was supposed to air and got postponed because of the news coverage relating to the attack. I was back in the studio recording another episode, I guess a few days after the actual attack. And of course, those of us who lived in New York, but everyone across the country was feeling a sense of shock, but, a little bit more so in Manhattan. And it felt very strange to be doing anything else besides just regarding this, traumatic event. So there I was needing to do my work, and and I'm dubbing a cartoon, and I couldn't have felt more odd. And when you have to deliver a performance, you have to find something compelling to hold on to in order to make it work for yourself. You have to, bring yourself into the role. And so I was sitting in the booth and feeling like I was really detached and not able to work as I wanted to work. And so I had to find something that made sense for me to be there. And I thought, well, at the very least, perhaps I can be part of a show that provides entertainment and distraction for the children, the kids, and maybe if it does a little bit better than that, it can also provide them with a sense of courage and hope. Not that my performance was about that, but the show itself could do that, and I could be a part of that, right? Very often in times of trouble, people go to their entertainments as a balm or a salve. And I don't know if that might have been part of why Yu-Gi-Oh! Caught on in the United States in the way that it did. I don't know. But that certainly helped me to understand that I was in a position where maybe I could do something useful.
Is there a dream role for you? Something that you would just love to do, or something that you've seen in the past and wish you had done?
Yeah. My background is in theater, largely, and every actor wants to portray Hamlet, and I'm way too old to do that now. But certainly, that's a role. In terms of characters that I would like to portray, I'm a big fan of Captain America. I mean, I think Chris Evans is amazing, but I would love to do an animated version of Captain America. I think he's an interesting character and a difficult one to portray because he's not flashy, he's not cool, he's not tortured, openly at least. But I think it would be a great challenge to be able to convey his complexity and simplicity, because he has both. And of course, I'd love to portray Spider-Man, but I think I'd largely be considered not the appropriate vocal type, right? And I would love to portray an animated version of Han Solo. So I'm basically still back in my childhood. Yes.
Speaking of that, I'm working on this animated series. You want to do a couple books?
Sure. I'd be happy to do it.
So would you do an Indiegogo project if it was like they decide they're going to Indiegogo kick or Kickstarter their Captain America animated series, and they're like, Dan Green, please, if we raise enough money, will you do this?
Sure.
I'm trying to make somebody out there that's listening to this just I wanted to work with Dan Green. This is my goal.
I'd also love to do any kind of, my geek passions are, Star Wars, Star Trek, or whatever. So, I'd flip if I could do a Star Trek related thing, or have the opportunity to work, with a Patrick Stewart or, some of my own heroes. I just love the opportunity to be able to tell stories and create in a fun and exciting way.
I feel like we need to get your contact out there to Will Wheaton right now, since he's got that show coming out on Sci-Fi. Maybe he could work Patrick Stewart at the same time.
Sure. He's got him on speed dial. He's like, yo, Patrick. And Patrick's like, what's up? And he's like,
can you do an Akbar?
Can I do it? What is this, a trap?
I'd say a good number of us in this room probably grew up Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, yeah.
And we grew up, getting up 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, starting our Saturday morning to the set, that cartoon thing.
Oh, yeah. Which we don't really have anymore.
Exactly. And we don't have it anymore. Like you just said, what was your favorite Saturday morning cartoon?
I was way into... They had Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. And they also had a decent, I guess the Hulk animation. No, they had a decent Hulk animation. That's right. And I sort of had to watch that because I was so indoctrinated in comics. And when I was 10, I was taking drawing lessons from a comic book artist, so that helped to reinforce, that addiction. I grew up through Scooby-Doo and Super Friends, and when G-Force or Gatchaman, that was just probably my Speed Racer, and that was my first experience of Japanese animation. And I thought those were great. And what else? Well, and then the G.I. Joe stuff comes along, but that was also sort of after school. I loved Thundercats and, Jason the Wheeled Warriors, I remember being a bad show that I always watched. It's like, this show sucks. When's the next episode? And Transformers. When Transformers, evolved into CG, and this is much later, like Beast Wars and stuff like that. I just thought that was so cool, and I saw the future of animation. I was like, yeah, it's gonna be like this now. It's gonna be fantastic. But those were the kinds of things that, I gravitated to. But again, I was a big fan of animation, but never thinking of myself as being an actor. That was not. I didn't decide to pursue acting until at the end of high school. So
somehow Michael Bay gets a hold of Thundercat. Since he's getting a hold of everything else in the 80s, would you go out for Lion-O? Because you feel like you got the
I got the vocal chops, depending on how you interpret Lion-O, yeah. But
clearly 36-year-old man, not 18-year-old boy.
Right. Or a 36-year-old man with a boy's mentality, I guess is according, to the story origin, that's the way, he's originally presented. But I think I would feel lucky to portray an explosion in Michael Bay's version of the Thundercats. So.
Although, going back to the complex, tortured but not really, but maybe on the inside kind of characters, Knuckles from Sonic the Hedgehog. Do you get to do the raps too, or is it just the... And if not, why not?
The raps?
Well, he's got several raps on the video games.
Oh, is that? I see. I don't play the games. It was so much fun to have been provided that opportunity to portray that character, and I was really surprised actually that they cast me again, because I think with Yu-Gi-Oh, particularly because I was basically portraying two roles at opposite ends of the spectrum vocally, just in terms of pitch and mentality. I just kind of felt like, they probably aren't going to want to cast me in something else, and they probably just want to keep me on that. But Knuckles was great, and, he's cantankerous, and he's got attitude. He's kind of the Wolverine of that group, and so, that was totally fun. And, while I haven't been provided the opportunity to rap, I have sufficient rhythm that I think I can do it, and it would be fun.
Kirk or Picard?
Can I be their love child?
I can't stop you, so...
You also forgot Cisco.
There's Cisco. I actually had the opportunity to... There was a production of Othello that Avery Brooks was cast as Othello. And Andre Braugher was cast as a Black Iago. And it was a very interesting production. And I was, a student and just, part of the background scenery. But it's so funny because it was before he was cast in Deep Space Nine. But I got to see the rehearsal process and whatever, and I was like, you'd be great in Star Trek. You'd be great as like a captain or whatever in Star Trek. And then he got cast. But in terms of like who's my favorite captain, whether it's Kirk or Picard, I was just celebrating Patrick Stewart's contribution last night, and I loves my Captain Kirk. I love Shatner's interpretation of that character. But I think I'd go with Picard's style of command. Which is obviously much more realistic because they, let's take the three most important members of the crew and put them in danger every week.
Okay. Since you did Yugi's voice for so many years and you did most of the duels and everything being Yami, did you ever retain enough of the card information to ever play Yu-Gi-Oh? Did you ever get to play the card game?
This is a question I get asked often. So within the first year or so of the show coming out and becoming popular, I was visiting home at Thanksgiving, and one of my sister's friends had a son who came and was a part of that, and so he was really into the game, and we played several rounds of the game, and he kicked my ass every time. But I had a basic understanding. The game is the fundamental elements of the game are easy to comprehend at first, and then of course it becomes increasingly complex the more you get into it. And I never went to that level. And actually, me and the voice actor Wayne Grayson, who plays Joey, one project we had was doing an informational video to walk through the rules and help the kids understand how to play the game. And we were both like, "Oh, finally, we're going to do this thing, and then we're going to really understand what we're talking about." No, that didn't happen. But I don't play the game. But I really get why people like it. And this is my first official convention in the United States. But previously, just in the last couple of years, I have been asked to host the tournament stuff, and which is a very different experience than this kind of thing. And they take it so seriously, and there's so much complexity and intricacy that I think is fascinating. So I get why people like it. I don't think that, people who are into that game are stupid or weird or whatever. I can see why it's really immersive and compelling and involving. Yeah. But I suck at it.
But do you think in the tournaments you should be allowed to monologue for 20 minutes about how your next card will destroy your opponent?
There would be even longer tournaments if that.
So what other interests do you have besides voice acting?
You mean like in terms of professional stuff or just personal life stuff? Or
Well, like professional stuff, and what do you do to have fun?
Okay. Well, professionally, I really love being a performer, but also not too long ago, I started directing stuff, voiceover stuff, and I also directed a little bit of theater. And I directed most of Samurai Deeper Kyo. I also adapted all the scripts, and that's an interesting process. And some of the working as a producer and a director is really interesting for me because you get to be involved. It's not a power trip thing. It's being able to be involved in greater parts of the storytelling besides just your own function as a performer, right? And while I love being able to portray a character, I'm not one of those actors that is enamored of my own work. Some actors, they'll talk to you about what they do, and they're like, "Yeah, and I did this role, and I was awesome. That was great." It's like, "Oh, that's great, wonderful for you." But I like to work with the bigger picture. And one of my favorite things was I was doing some stuff, and we were using a composer to create original scoring for it, and I was functioning as I was directing the talent and recording the talent, and I was basically in charge of all the audio. So that means the voiceover stuff, the music stuff, the sound effects, the mixing of all that, all those things. That was interesting to me, and I've loved sound since I was a kid. One of my first favorite toys was a tape recorder. Not me talking into it, but like recording stuff and trying to make cool sounds and whatever. And I found like the behind the scenes stuff with Ben Burtt doing the Star Wars sound effects and hitting on cables, and that's how they came to the play. I was like, "Oh, that's so awesome!" But anyway, so I was working with this composer who didn't have the time to review all the video, and he didn't have time to read all the material to know the story. So it was very helpful for me to outline that and help him understand that, and to discuss what kind of musical style are we going to approach this with. When do we need to create a thematic motif that we're going to refer to later and that's going to build? And, I mean, that was just, for me, an incredibly interesting area of work to be involved in. So, professionally, I'd like to do more of that kind of stuff. I also have many story ideas of my own, like every actor does. But I really feel the need to get those out there. I don't know if necessarily that I need to get them out there in the form of audio, but I want to move forward with those things. And in my personal life, just to have fun, I love to play video games. I love to still read comic books. I even read books without pictures.
Exist?
They do. Those aren't just nasty rumors. But I also have I have twins, 2.5 years old, and that is a magical age, as any parent would tell you. And so that's incredibly involving. So, yeah. I wouldn't call that recreation, but yeah.
Having done direction,
Mm-hmm.
do you think now when you're in the booth as the actor,
Mm-hmm.
does that improve or degrade the experience? Like, in the sense of,
Right.
do you take direction well because you're very sympathetic with the director and you've been there? Or is it more like, oh, why is he telling me to do that? If I were directing me, I'd do this.
Yes. Well, despite what other directors would say about me, they're wrong and I'm right. No. A good actor understands they're always going to be better with a director, right? And so I like having a director to work with. And my style of direction is most influenced by my background in theater. And I had the fortune to work with very good directors. And I worked with some bad ones, which is just, how things happen. And you also learn from working with bad directors or, having a negative experience with anything. So having that context allowed me to distill and understand what is effective direction and what isn't. And when I'm in the booth being directed, I want the direction, and I can also appreciate when I'm getting good direction and really go with that and throw myself into the role maybe more because of that. I mean, it's all a collaborative process, right? But I can also recognize when I'm not receiving good direction, which as an actor is helpful, right? Now, when you realize that you're not getting good direction, you don't want to start a combative, dialogue or anything like that. Of course not. Because again, ideally it's a collaborative circumstance, and the more that you can throw your energy toward that mutual, positive result, the better. But when you're not getting good direction, you can identify, okay, I'm not getting this, and I'm not getting this, I'm not getting this. Or they think they're giving me something, but they're really just giving me a bunch of exposition. They're not giving me direction, which is a common mistake of a lot of novice directors. They think the more they tell you about the story, the better you're going to be able to portray your character. That's not true necessarily. Sometimes when you're an actor, you just need, no, but tell me what to do. What do you want me to do right now? Because I can't act the whole story. I can act a moment and then the moment after that, as an example. But yeah, so I'd say that having experience directing helps me act, but doesn't interfere with the direction I'm getting. How diplomatic was that answer?
Well, speaking of diplomatic questions, what's been the most interesting challenge that you've had professionally?
As an actor?
Yeah, or as a
director?
Either or.
Either or. I'd say as an actor, it was one of my first professional experiences, and I was also just talking about this today. I was understudying a play. It was on Broadway. I was just out of school, and I was understudying the lead character who was basically driving the play on stage 90% of the time. It was also in Irish dialect, and I was on stage with real Irish people, so you had to be convincing. And I had to go on before the show officially opened, and because of the rules at the time, I was only permitted to have one run-through of a 3-act play. Yeah. So that was challenging, but it worked out. So that was good. And I think otherwise professionally, some of the challenges that are the hardest to get through are not a precursor to a beautiful result. It's not like, oh, this was really challenging, but we got through it, and then we found this beautiful performance and this wonderful No, sometimes the challenge is just suffering through the things that can be difficult, scheduling, things not coming together right, surmounting frustration, aggravation, those kinds of things, just to get something done. And when it's done, well, at least it's pretty good, or it's okay, or it has a professional standard. But it's not necessarily the most amazing thing in the world. So, yeah. And there are many examples of those.
We got one for
Yeah.
I want to take it back a little bit.
Sure.
Some of the earlier voice actors. So since Mel LeBlanc clearly brought it out for voice actors to be more prominent and not just a background guy who never got paid.
Right.
How do you feel? Is he
How do I feel about Mel Blanc?
Is he one of your big inspirations?
I think anybody would be a fool not to recognize his incredible contribution, not only to vocal acting, but to acting in general, comedy, characterization. I mean, the man, his influence, I think, is probably hard to quantify, because he was so much a part of multiple generations, subconscious. I probably learned a lot of comedy from Mel Blanc. And I'm an extremely funny guy. I'm kidding. But, I mean, there's a reason why he's held in such high esteem. And when you listen to the stuff today, I mean, if he were doing what he did today, what he did then, he would still fucking kill. Pardon my French.
Oh, you're fine.
You're like, no, please drop more F-bombs. Okay.
Hundreds more.
Hundreds more. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he's well regarded.
Did you know the young lady that did Rocky is still actually voice acting into her 90s?
Wow! Talia Shire?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
I know that voice she talked about. Will you be voice acting clear into your 90s?
I certainly hope so. I mean, and if I am, I certainly hope it's worth something. You know, it's a performance worth listening to. But kind of similar to like I never wanted to be a celebrity or had those kinds of ambitions. I don't need to keep being a performer necessarily, and it could be that something else takes my focus. I was asked last night by Eric, actually, because we were talking about the difference between people who really know what they want to do and people who just kind of, I don't know, you still haven't figured it out what it is that you want to pursue. And so he said, okay, but if I were to ask you right now what you really want to do, would you have an answer? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, well, what is it? And I said, I would like to be the producer, the head of a studio, creating various kinds of storytelling, whether it's animation or audiobooks or writing or illustration or maybe comic book stuff. But I love to participate in various forms of storytelling, and I don't have to be the center of attention. I don't want to be the center of attention. I don't mind being the center of attention occasionally, if that's how I can best serve, the telling of the story. But I just love the process. I love working with creative people. I love that sense of excitement that happens when you feel like you're interacting with something and with material and other ideas, and you really see it spark off of other people, and it changes the way that you carry yourself. It changes the way that you orient around your day and what you think might happen. And that's really quite compelling.
So this has been the first con in America you've been in a long time. How does it feel?
It feels fantastic. Everybody should be in my position. And as much as I've been talking about not needing the attention or striving for the attention, to receive that attention is amazing, and I can understand why people, want to have more of that. But after receiving so much, I'm also quite content to go back home and just be with my kids. So. But yeah, the people here in Nashville have been great, and any convention that I've attended, and I've attended conventions in Australia and New Zealand, I've always had positive experiences. Fans have always been very gracious and giving, and as well as the professionals who are helping to make those conventions happen. So I've never had a nightmare experience, and I know that sometimes that can happen, and I consider myself lucky.
Do you have a favorite convention experience, or?
Not yet. We still have another day here.
Or of any convention.
Of any convention, yeah. Right. Well, part of what's really fun about going to conventions for me as a geek is being able to see other things, like one thing I did was when the Lord of the Rings stuff was happening, right? So I got to meet Andy Serkis and John Rhys Davies, who's a fantastic raconteur and just a very gregarious guy. And as a comic book guy, they often have comic book guys there, and I almost invariably tend to connect with them. So Stuart Immonen was a guy I really enjoyed meeting. I met Mark Waid, who's a fantastic writer. So those kinds of things are fun, but a singular experience, no, I can't put my finger on it. But it's I feel so fortunate to be able to, be a part of those kinds of things, And who's the actor? He was in Serenity. He played the preacher. Ron Glass. Yeah. And so I met him years ago, and he was just such a lovely man, and I remember him from Barney Miller, and he looks just as good as he did then, which is kind of crazy. But he was just like no pretension, just a real person. And that is so often true, of people that you think could have an attitude, And that's kind of reassuring. It's like, oh, you can still, have that kind of recognition and success and not be an asshole. Oh, I'm sorry, not be a fucking asshole.
And not be a Justin Bieber?
What's that?
And not be a Justin Bieber?
And not be a Justin Bieber. Oh, that guy, I hope he doesn't get messed up.
But speaking of hard-hitting questions.
Yes.
We
are talking about cartoons.
That's right. Your favorite candy and or sweet?
Oh, God, I'm not going to go there. No. Reese's Pieces. No, I'm sorry, Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. After that, Kit Kat. And one of my friends, for my most recent birthday, I just turned 21. She asked me on the phone, okay, so wait, now what's your favorite kind of, because she knew I like Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. She asked me, what's your kind of favorite chocolate? I said, I like, dark chocolate, okay. And then in the mail I received, a Millennium Falcon, like this big, and it's like silver on the outside, but on the inside, dark chocolate, and then the peanut butter. right? And I just, right? Now, I have not cut into that, right? It's in the fridge, because I need an occasion, Maybe I'll wait until, like, Star Wars 7 comes out. I don't know. But, that's my favorite game. I really dug deep for that.
Thank you.
You're awesome.
And you get little lightsabers for candles.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
This is what I think of actually does involve these. But well, maybe you can find some in the theater. What project that you have worked on in the past that did not have a giant robot would most benefit from having giant robots?
Well, I think, everything could benefit from having a giant robot.
Well, what would
most benefit? Right. That's a better question. Well, none of the theater work would really.
Giant robots.
When I was doing Joe Pitt and Angels in America, I don't think giant robot really would have. But it would have been interesting to see a giant robot in Gokusen. Do you know that show? The Gokusen? Yeah. So this is the daughter of a mob boss being a teacher. And, that show, while that show wasn't really geared toward that, no pun intended, that show had enough comedy they could have handled that well. Yeah. And that was one of my favorite shows, too. I adapted and directed that. Oh. And I think it probably appealed to me at the time because it was a high school setting and not demons and monsters. And, so of course, now I want to put a giant robot in there.
Yeah. I want you to dive deep for this one. This one's a little off the wall.
Okay.
Who would look better in drag, Yugi or Seto Kaiba? Who do you want to see?
Well, want is not the word, I would say. But to answer your question, who would look better, I'm going to avoid the pedophilia response and say Seto Kaiba.
Yami Yugi.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Yami Yugi, I'm sorry.
Yes,
right.
obviously.
Right, he looks like a 12-year-old. No, okay.
He sounds old.
Yes, he does, which I understand why fans are like, what the hell is that voice coming out of that guy's face for? And again, I just want to, no, seriously.
He's got the slinty eyes.
Right, exactly. And just on that point, my function as an actor is to basically do what I'm told as well as I can. So those determinations about what to do vocally were things I was asked to do.
Yeah.
And I again understand why fans of the original series are like, that's so stupid. And yet I'm very rarely asked to do Yugi's voice. It's the Yami voice that people gravitated to or liked better, whatever. But yeah, I think Seto Kaiba still would probably be the sexier one because bad boys are always sexier than good guys.
Long legs.
He's long legs, right? That's right. Yeah, and how are you going to find a dress to match Yami's hair? I mean, that's.
Oh, right.
We have that girl that's going around in the magic card dress. Find her, she'll make it.
Well, you point her out to me. Yeah. Now we're going to talk about robots and drag, or
We are now.
Well, I always thought Optimus Prime would be.
I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
Going back to your experience in theater, I heard a rumor that you're a really good singer. Could you expand on that?
Could I expand on that rumor?
Yeah.
I have the ability to sing. I don't know that I would say that I'm a really good singer, but yeah, I mean, I can carry it too. I'm great with Happy Birthday. Row, row, row your boat. I kill.
Have you done any musical theater?
When only in high school. I did The Music Man. I was Harold Hill. We did West Side Story. I was Tony, and I'm a baritone, and Tony is not. He's a tenor role, and actually, we had 4 performances or whatever. It's high school, right? And thank God, because I lost my voice after the 4th performance. But anyway. But I enjoy musicals and stuff like that. I don't love all musicals. Like, a musical has to be good, for me to like it. But when it's good, I think it's fantastic. I mean, West Side Story, that's an amazing piece of music. Not that Music Man isn't. And also with kids, I'm listening to a lot of like Disney stuff or whatever. And I swear to God, I get choked up with The Little Mermaid's Part of Your World. I mean, especially the Broadway, track of that, she really kills. But yeah, I have great respect for singing and whatnot. So,
Would you do musical theater now?
well, I had a passion for theater, and I suppose I might, but being a single parent, that's a very hard scenario to imagine actually doing, performing at night, performing 8 times a week. And also, ideally auditioning and working on stuff during the day. When would I see my kids? But if that were not a complication, well, sure. But it would have to be a good musical.
What if it was a cartoon musical with giant robots in drag?
With Captain America?
With Captain America.
All over it!
That's a sex change waiting to happen.
Are there any charities that you particularly support or endorse or like to pimp out?
Right, to pimp out. Well, specific charities, not necessarily, although I think anything regarding cancer research, cancer has taken many members of my family. My father died of a heart condition, so also that's close to home. So in terms of health-related stuff, those are things that I support. And outside of the health stuff as it is directly, there are many things environmentally that I really think we need to be paying attention to. And so, I would support anything that people do in those efforts. And you can support something without necessarily giving it money, which I think people should do. So.
Like recycling?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I also think, and this is very, I know, topical, but the wealth disparity is alarming. And I do think we need campaign reform. I do think that there are things that we as citizens know we could change if we just put ourselves to the task.
Any other questions before I ask my final question?
Well, I have one really fan. Go for it.
All right. Are you sure?
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay.
I'll come afterwards.
Okay. If you could leave any message for the people out on the internet and at large, what message would you leave them?
Have the courage to follow your dreams and passions. You will likely be surprised that you can make them real. And you will always regret never having tried if you don't. And I was having this conversation with a complete stranger yesterday who I just randomly met, but she wanted to get into doing voiceovers. And she was one of those people that I think that was such a nice person, but she felt that this goal was too much for her to believe that she could achieve, right? But she also knew that she had a talent, but she didn't want to seem conceited to believe in that talent, right? And so I tried to help her out by personalizing it a little bit, and I said, well, that thing in the Bible where they talk about, and I'm not a hugely religious guy, but they talk about don't hide your light under a bushel. Have you guys heard that before?
Yes.
Right. So another thing that I would like people to think about is if you have a talent, in a sense, that's something that's been given to you. So it's your responsibility to share. It's not glorification of yourself. You kind of have the duty to make something of it.
Well, you certainly made an awesome something out of this interview. So thank you very much for talking with us.
My complete pleasure. Thank you for being so gracious.
And hopefully you enjoy the rest of this wonderful con.
I don't doubt that I will.
So that was Dan Green. He was pretty great, huh? Again, this is not our typical AwesomeCast episode. You can find most of those all of them, at the AwesomeCast, awesomecast.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, all AwesomeCast. And if you want to follow me, it's at Basil Time on Twitter, and Kevin's at Twitless_Kevin. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Rougher than the rest of them, tougher than leather. You can call me Knuckles. Unlike like Sonic, I don't chuckle. I'd rather flex my muscles, I'm hard as nails. It ain't hard to tell, I break them down whether they solid or frail. Unlike the rest, I'm independent since my first breath. First test, feel the right, then the worst left. Born on an island in the heavens.